Hello everyone, and welcome to Martindale-Hubbell's webinar, The Case for Blogging. Our presenters today are Robert Feinberg from Feinberg and Albin PC, Timothy Lynch with Swartz and Lynch, LLP, Ben McHugh, Social Media Specialist with Martindale-Hubbell, and Andy Simpson, SEO Specialist, also with Martindale-Hubbell. We are going to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to submit any questions through the webinar platform. There will be a Q&A session during the last 15 minutes of the webinar where we will try and get to all of your questions. If we have any unanswered questions, we will respond to those directly after the event. And a webinar replay will be provided to all attendees after the event is concluded. So we're going to get started with the case for blogging. We're actually going to start off with a poll to find out what is preventing you from blogging. So I'm going to launch that poll now, and we'll give you a minute to select your answer. You should be able to see the poll now on your screen. So what is preventing you from blogging? Not enough time, not sure how to do it, can't think of topics, or you don't see the value. So I'll just give you another minute to answer that poll question, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ben McHugh, who is going to talk about the poll results and get right into our webinar content. We still have a few people answering. Okay, that's good. I'm going to close the poll, and then I'm going to share those results with you and hand you off to Ben, who can take a look at the results and comment on them.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see the top two results. We have not enough time and not sure how to do it. So the good news is I think we addressed both of these questions in this webinar. If you feel like you don't have enough time to blog, the good news is you may not have to blog as often as you think. We'll get to that in a little bit. And if you're not sure how to do it, well, you're in the right place. So we're going to discuss some great ways to get started. Speaking of which, I think we should go start to our next slide, and we'll begin. Great. So in this webinar, we're going to build a strong case for blogging as a cost-effective way to market your firm and reach new clients. We'll cover techniques and tips on how to write a blog post that gets read, how to expose your blog post so that it reaches the right audience at the right time, some basic steps and best practices for making your blog SEO friendly, and some legal considerations when blogging. So let's get started. As an attorney with billable hours to consider, why blog? Now, before I go into my list of reasons why you should blog, I want to turn it over to our panelists, starting with Tim. Hi, Tim. Can you tell me a little bit more about your blog and maybe what your goal was when you started it?
Well, I started it, I want to say, about a year ago, and I started it to get more business initially. It's a very inexpensive way of doing things. And as I started doing it, I realized that, this is a good way for me to show clients they could trust me, that I know something about a legal issue that they're looking for an attorney on. Whether it's a product that's having some trouble out there, so we do a blog on that product, and if somebody's been injured by it, hopefully they'll come to our blog and come to us. And then the other reason why I like to blog is I think it's important to inform the public what our point of view is. I think we've all heard about tort reform these past couple of decades, and it's really skewed the jury pool. So I think it's very important to put these things out there and to inform the public and potential jurors on cases.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good point that you made about trust. Now, Robert, I'm going to pose the same question to you just so everybody can get familiar with your blog. Tell me a little bit more about your blog and what were your goals when starting with it?
Okay, I'll start with the goals, and I wish I could be as altruistic as Tim, who wants to inform the public about tort reform and so forth. I'd like to think that that's some aspect of my blogging, but I did it, to be very honest, starting in 2008 because I was told the search engines love it, and that's by adding fresh content, you're looking good in the eyes of the search engines. It has had two secondary effects, which is I think it's allowed me to become fluent in certain topics and in explaining things. And so often when I'm meeting with a client, I will go into my blog speak to explain comparative negligence, to explain joint tortfeasor concepts and things like that. And it also, of course, may help with what they call, I guess, in the industry, conversions. People see your blog, they tend to think of you, and you're more apt to get that phone call than you would be if you hadn't blogged.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you made, especially when you were talking about how writing the blog almost helps you rehearse your elevator speech for whatever kind of topic you're addressing. So I'm glad that you both gave me those perspectives. There are a lot of reasons why you might want to blog. So I'm going to go into my reasons. I get asked a lot, why should you blog? And I usually give three responses. The first one is that blogging is an effective, inexpensive way to market your practice. You'll see a stat on the screen. The ABA's 2015 Legal Technology Survey report, it found that 39% of law firms that blog for professional purposes have gotten clients through their blog. And that's just talking about direct leads coming from your blog. It's not counting the ways that blogging supports other marketing activities. It's not counting how blogging supports visibility in the search engines or establishes trust. That's just people coming to your business through your blog, and that's almost 2 out of 5 law firms getting a lead from their blogging activities. When you compare this with other marketing activities you might go through, that can be very effective, especially if you think of ways that are more expensive, like you could spend a lot of money on printing and then not get any calls. That's the second point, really, is that blogging can be very inexpensive if you're on a platform like LinkedIn. If you're a member of lawyers.com, both of these websites offer free blogging platforms to members. On the other hand, if you want to start your own blog, blogging software like WordPress is free to host on your own servers, although it takes a bit of know-how to get working. Although it's also inexpensive to host your own blog on a site like WordPress.com. In conclusion, I would say that blogging is not only effective, but it's very inexpensive. You add them together, and it's a high return on investment. Okay, we'll move on to my next point. Sorry, we're on the right slide. That was my mistake. So blogging can help you build trust and authority with potential clients before you even meet them. There was a survey conducted by Google finding that 34% of people cite trustworthiness as the top factor when choosing an attorney. And blogging is one way to lay that foundation for the trust before that potential client or business referral walks through your door. It does this really in 3 ways. When you're explaining legal topics in plain language, you're demonstrating your command of the law. You choose the topics which you write about, and that can help you demonstrate expertise in a particular practice area. Give people an idea of what kind of cases, what kind of issues you deal with. And then the third way to establish trust and authority through your blog is really the tone that you use. Now, you write on your blog, you can adopt a particular tone. Let's say you're a family law attorney, and part of your brand is being passionate. You write in a compassionate way. On the other hand, personal injury attorneys may want to convey that they will aggressively advocate for their clients in court. Well, the tone that you convey comes strongest, I think, through your blog because you write it in your own voice. That's different than the other kind of text on your website. It's got more of like a marketing speak to it. Writing on your blog shows your potential clients that you understand their problem and their pain. So I'm going to turn it over to my panelists, starting with Robert. Robert, is there a tone that you selected for your blog? What tone do you go for when you write?
Well, it's a hard balance, to be honest, because I try to cite authorities. I try to be what one might say legalistic, to be very serious. And on the other hand, I try to use language that is reachable. And I've been told to really write this to the level of a high school reader, and I do attempt to do that, but I can't resist throwing in a case citation or making, so that's the tone. It's some sort of balance between those goals.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, with that advice, writing a high school level language, that's great advice no matter what you're writing for. And it's not necessarily because your potential clients won't understand what you write. It's because they don't have the time. So the more you can simplify it and go for that conversational aspect, I think that's great advice. Now, Tim, I'll move on to you. I know part of your blog, you're more about informing the public. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do adopt a more conversational attitude. I actually been hosting a cable TV show, and I interview. Wow. Yes, and I interview legal guests, coming in to talk about some sort of legal issue. And so I'm always thinking when my guest is talking, how is the viewing public receiving this? And I always follow up questions, or I help explain what they're saying. And that's actually, I think, helped me out a lot, because when I do a blog, I try to be very conversational and try to put things in a way that the viewing public will easily understand.
That's great to know, and again, thank you for sharing. So we'll move on to my third point. Blogging is a great way to assist in what's known as SEO. Now, my co-presenter, Andy Simpson, is going to be going into this topic in a little more depth in a few minutes, but I think it's good to mention the power of SEO here too. So I'm just going to turn it to Andy briefly.
Yeah, SEO, well, thank you, Ben. SEO, or search engine optimization, if you're not aware of the abbreviation. So Tim and Robert are doing exactly what you should be using a blog for. They're both producing high-quality content that users want to read. They're working on their brand. The content that they create keeps the visitors on the website, which boosts engagement. And they're also ranking. The engagement on the website is a ranking factor. So a little fun fact here from Google, that content is one of the top 3 ranking factors for Google. So writing a blog is building content, which is exactly what Google wants to see. So as an SEO specialist, we encourage all our clients to blog. So back over to you, Ben, to tell us more about how to write a blog.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, before we start again with Ben, I'm just going to ask the people who have dialed in if you could answer the question, can everyone hear Ben clearly? Because we have a couple of comments that he is dropping out. So if you could just type onto your panel, your control panel, yes, can hear him, or no, cannot hear him. We'll just look for a few quick answers to see if we are having an audio issue. Okay, so it looks like people are saying that they can hear him, so we're going to continue with Ben. If somebody drops out, just submit a question, a comment saying, the person has dropped out, I can't hear you.
I'm so glad everybody can hear me. Okay, great. So anyhow, Andy, thank you for that, and I look forward to hearing more about SEO in a little bit. So now that we understand the importance of blogging, let's move on to actually writing the blog posts. How do you write a post that your potential clients can read and understand easily? I'm going to go into all of this in more detail. One simple thing to keep in mind is that your blog should simply add to the conversation by educating on a topic, answering a common question, or breaking down a complex legal issue into easily understood language. Now, that's easier said than done, so let's go into a little more detail. How do you find good topics? That was one of our poll questions. And I see that some people said, yeah, it's kind of hard to come up with good topics. So hopefully I can help you in this regard. How do you come up with good topics? That depends on what you hope to accomplish with your blog. So let's say the purpose of your blog was to attract business referrals. In that case, you want to choose topics that are of interest to other attorneys. Then your goal is to show those potential referrals that you know what you're talking about and show them a little bit about how you work and how you think. Topics can be anything from changes to the laws in your state, complex legal arguments, research into the law. If you're writing for other attorneys, you can really go as in-depth as you want. Now, on the other hand, if you want to attract potential clients to the blog, you need to consider who those clients are and choose topics that address their specific pain points. Now, I know you all are probably very familiar with the kinds of things that your clients want to know because you get asked it all the time. They're calling you on the phone. You have to think of topics that are really going to affect them, pertain to your area of practice. Here are some basic questions you can ask. Hopefully they'll help you come up with some good blog topics. When people find out that you're an attorney, what questions do you get asked the most? When potential clients call your firm, what concerns do they have? Think about recent changes to the law and how they impact your clients. Again, I want to see if some of my panelists would like to chime in, starting with Robert. Can I ask you who you intend to reach with your blog?
Well, I definitely intend to reach would-be clients, but there is one thing that comes to mind I want to point out, and that is obviously a web page and a blogging page is available to anyone who's motivated to go to your website, and that includes defense attorneys. So that's one reason not to, for lack of a better word, dumb it down that much. I think you want to establish credibility with them. And while that will allow some flexibility in language, I don't think it's bad to use citations. And in terms of who I'm blogging for, though, primarily I am blogging for would-be clients. And I'm trying to explain legal concepts that they may be facing.
Yeah, that's a good point. You are writing sometimes for two different audiences, and you need a little bit of approach. I think citations are a great idea, especially if you want your blog post to be read by other attorneys. Tim, I was going to ask you, do you have any tricks for coming up with topics to write about? Or how do you come up with topics?
I would say most of the topics I come up with are from the newspaper. I'm a news junkie, and I get a lot of newspapers, you know, online, and going through them, you know, every so often there's, you know, a series of injuries related to a particular product, recalls, things like that. So those are the things that I'll pick up and start writing a blog about.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it informs the public and hopefully gets some of those cases heading in our direction.
When you're on television, do you ever get ideas for a blog post?
Not yet.
Not yet?
That's more of the TV show deals with more constitutional issues.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. So the second thing a lot of our clients ask me is how long should a blog post be? The simple answer I can give is as long or as short as you need to accomplish your goals. When you've chosen a topic, you're going to realize that some of those topics are going to need more words. Some of them are going to need less. So let's say you're trying to answer a question completely and fully in a blog post. You may need more words to completely answer that question. On the other hand, if you're commenting or adding to something that someone else wrote, you may only need, say, 500 words to say that with. If that's the case, that's fine. Just don't use more words than necessary. Don't try to pad out anything you write. And finally, if you find that you're writing, let's say, over 1,500 words, if you're writing pages and pages, you may want to consider writing 2 or 3 blog posts and splitting up what you write. The idea is some people, if they see a very long post, they may decide not to read it. More importantly, though, than how long it is how long it feels. So I also want to make a point here. You have to keep your content skimmable. There's some research from the Nielsen-Norman Group. This is an authority on web usability. People in my position refer to this research a lot. They found that on average, when users visit your web page, they read maybe 28% of the words. Now, of course, some of them are going to read everything from start to finish, but most don't. Most readers skim. So when you write, just make sure that you're writing for somebody that's skimming. And we do this by breaking things up, using headings, subheadings, a bulleted list, short paragraphs, using bold text to highlight important points. This makes the post more easily skimmed, and if the post is easy to skim, then it's also going to be easy to read. One last quick point, how often do you publish a blog post? And I'll just quickly say, once or twice a month is great. If you can't keep a consistent, if you can't post that frequently, though, what's more important than frequency is consistency. So try to have a schedule, keep a consistent schedule, focus on writing quality posts rather than quantity. Tim or Robert, I'll let either one of you take this first. I'm wondering how often you both try to post a new blog article.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. This is Robert. I really shoot for once a week or once every 10 days. And I think I've been pretty much been able to keep to it the last 2 years.
Wow, that's dedicated. Tim, what's your schedule for posting?
It's kind of interesting. I probably do around 5 blogs a month, and then we post them, in some sort of schedule. But I've usually, sometimes I sit down and I do about 3 of them at once. But then so it works out to about 5 a month.
Oh, that's great. And I think that gives our viewers here an idea of just how different it can be from person to person. You can find a schedule that works for you and is comfortable.
Yes. If I could add, Tim said something that I think is very useful when he used the words "at once." He'll do 3 at once. I find it's best for me to dedicate an afternoon, several hours, and try to come up with 3 or 4. And of course, I'll edit them quite a bit thereafter. But it seems easier, at least in my schedule, and perhaps it isn't easier in Tim's based upon what he said, that isolating a couple of hours may help.
Yeah, I think that does apply for more than just you two. This industry, it's very common to be very busy, so you may find that doing all the work up front works better for you. So I think that is a great point. I'll move on to a few quick points I wanted to make when you're writing your blog post. There's 2 things that people see first. First thing that your audience is going to see is the title. And the second thing, it may be an image next to it, depending on how your blog is configured, depending on how it shows up in the search. It's an image and a title. That's the first thing people see before they even start reading, and that's what's going to be crucial getting your post read. We'll start with images. There was a study done where a blog post with an image was found 94% more likely to be read than one without. This is why I stress that you should take the time to find or create a unique image for each blog post. The challenge in this really is just choosing an image that you have permission to use. It's one thing to create your own image. If you're a great photographer, for the rest of us, there are royalty-free stock images available for purchase at sites like thinkstock.com, iStock. And again, images are, I consider them essential. Every blog post should have one if possible. Likewise, your post is going to have a title, and that's also one of the first things people see. The research you see cited on your screen was done by the company Chartbeat. They found that 55% of web users spend fewer than 15 seconds on a page. I've seen research where people spend even less time before they bounce off and go to somewhere else. You only have a few seconds to grab the reader's attention with a title, and I think that fact emphasizes this. So spend time and come up with the best title you can. Personally, what I do is I draft several titles, and then I choose the best one from a group. If you are wondering, well, how do I come up with a title? There's 3 quick approaches I can suggest. Now you can be direct and tell the reader exactly what they're going to read. For instance, if this webinar was a blog post, I might title it something like, How to Write a Blog Post That Gets Read. It's simple, it's direct, and it quickly proves its value to the reader. And another approach you can take is asking a question. You can ask a question in the title and answer it in the post. So, another possible title for a blog post might be, Does your blog make these mistakes? When the question is irresistible like that, some readers can't help but keep reading. Finally, you might have heard blog posts with numbers in the title, 7 tips for writing a blog post. This is almost cliche by now because it's so frequent, but it's still used because it works. Numbers promise something specific and easily scanned. So now you understand the importance of having a blog, and you have an understanding of how to write a blog post. Now how can you ensure that your time spent blogging will be worth it? Let's take a moment to discuss how to get exposure to your blog posts so that they have a greater chance of getting read and attracting the clients you're looking for. The first place you should start exposing your blog post is social media. And you start by posting links on your own social and I should say we are going to have an upcoming webinar about social media if you want a little more training in that. For now, I'll just say, if you have accounts, that's the first place you want to share your blog post. There are some tools for automatically sharing your posts. I've listed them up here. You can also check your individual blog platform for plugins. A lot of them will have a plugin, say for WordPress, that will take what you've written and schedule it to be posted on Facebook, Twitter, etc. Guest blogging is another way to expose your blog to a new audience. That's when you publish an original, unique blog post on someone else's blog. The trick to that is finding a popular, reputable blog with a readership that you'd like to reach, and then you arrange with the owner to get your own post published there. There are some final tips for getting exposure to your blog post that don't take much effort. You can always include a link to your blog within an email signature, and if you're part of a firm, everybody in the firm can have that link in there. You can have it printed on your business card, on any marketing collateral you produce. Another way to get free word of mouth is just not to be shy about discussing it. You can refer to a blog post that you've written if you are confronted with a similar issue either online or out at a business event. You can send links to your blog post via email to business peers or potential clients who have that issue that you addressed in the post. I'll leave it open to my panelists one more time. I'm starting with Robert. Are there any other things that you do to publicize your blog?
I really leave that to the Martindale people, and I think.
Thanks.
Okay, I think I personally haven't been proactive there, and if I could just interject something that's not exactly on point, is that I have started the last 2 years to do video blogs, and it's easier than the webinar attendees may think.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask that. You have a component of your blog. You do a video blog. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell me a little more about how that works?
Well, drawing upon something that Tim and I said about doing it at once, those 4 hours I might record or video 4 or 5 blogs on an iPad. Somebody will do it for me as I'm speaking. I find that the writing of the blog is harder than speaking a blog. So at that point, when I'm done with the 4 videos, I will turn that over to a secretary or paralegal and ask for it to be typed. And then I do heavy editing on that.
Oh, man, that's a way to write a blog post that I didn't consider. That's great.
So it goes quicker and smoother for me to do it that way. I know some people who do a video want to have a text in front of them. I prefer it the other way.
I see. And you find that takes you a lot of time? You mentioned that you do them all at once?
Yes, I find it goes pretty quickly, and by the time you're on blog 3, you know, you feel very much in the rhythm.
Very nice. Tim, I'll just turn it to you one last time. Are there any things that you do to publicize your blog?
No, I'm with Robert on that one. I rely upon the good people at Martindale-Hubbell. I mean, the only other thing I do is, you know, obviously, and I'm sure Robert does it too. You know, you tell friends if if something comes up, and you've done a blog on it. You know, I did a blog on that, or something like that. Sure, but no, I rely upon Martindale-Hubbell actually.
I'll read yours, Tim.
Robert. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying I'll read Tim's. I'll be sure to read Tim's now.
Great.
I'll read.
I think both of you, or one of you, had mentioned that after writing a blog, kind of rehearse what you say to other people when you're asked about a particular topic.
Yes, particularly with clients.
Yeah.
I can sort of almost see the blog in front of me as I'm explaining a legal concept. I mean, I've done it so many times in these blogs that it's almost second nature now.
Oh, great. That's a great way to promote and expose your blog by, again, just talking about it. It'll spread. So I want to turn it over to my co-presenter, Andy. The next step in getting exposure for your blog is on the search engine. So, Andy, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the first thing I'm going to cover, actually, because one of our listeners has just called, not called in, but they've asked what is SEO, and the SEO is search engine optimization. Because it's such a long thing to say, we just trim it down to SEO. So you'll be probably hearing me say that throughout my my piece here. So I want you to look at this list and really think of it as a checklist. So you've created your content, you've got this really awesome piece of content in front of you, and I just want you to stop and just consider now this checklist doesn't take that long, so I just want you to sit down for 5 minutes and think, okay, have I done X, Y, Z? And the checklist also you can apply this to any platform that you might write your blog. I know we've talked about WordPress a few times, but if you're also writing a a blog on lawyers.com, for example, or another platform. You can apply this checklist to any piece of writing that you're doing to be published online. And just briefly, the examples that I use in my piece here, that you can see them all and read them on the Martindale Market Your Firm blog. So you can see all the examples I mentioned in that blog there. So let's move on to point number 1, the page title. What is the page title? The page title is what appears in the search engine results. It's that first line of blue text now that your users are going to read. Now the good news is we can actually take control of what that actually says. So if you're not happy with what the text is there, you can go into your platform and actually edit that text. Again, we're limited with the number of characters, but we've got to make it punchy. 9 times out of 10, it will default to the title of the page that you've created or your headline of the page that you've created. So if that's perfectly acceptable, then that's fine. But just make sure that you've got the keywords in there. Usually at the start of the title really helps just to make it relevant to the users and the search engines. But most importantly, well, really, yes, most importantly, don't keyword stuff the title tag. Don't overdo it. So you can see that example there on the screen at the bottom. I'm not going to read it out. However, I think you can perfectly see what this attorney is trying to target and where he is. He's basically repeated himself and wasted the opportunity to use that more effectively. So we do see this quite often, and it's something that as an SEO specialist we have to clean up on a regular basis. Right, let's move on to number 2, the headline. So the headline is the title of the page. Again, going from Ben's advice, a lot of the time it's what your blog post is about. But when you're coming up with that title, just think about inserting some keywords. You know, what is your post about? What are you wanting how are you wanting your users, the people, to find it in the search engine? So just think about inserting a few keywords there. It certainly makes it more relevant to the users and to Google. And again, don't overdo it with the keywords. Don't stuff that keyword headline with keywords. Okay, point number 3. The content, the body text, the nuts and bolts, what you've written for your user. Now again, going back to what Ben said, it's some really good stuff there. Yes, you should format it and use paragraphs, bullet points, format the text, not only for your user, but also for the search engines. The search engines like a well-formatted, structured layout blog post or page. Now, to format it a little bit better, you can, for the main headline, the title of the post, you can use something called the H1 tag. Now again, this is a little bit techy, but most of your your blog platform software will have something where you can format your headline using the H1. And then the subheadings, you can format using the H2 header tag, as it's known. And this just breaks it up for the user and breaks it up for the search engine, so they understand what the post is about. Above all, though, I really point the 2 last points are about creating fantastic, awesome content. We can use these 7 best practices. We can apply that to the content. However, if your content's weak, if it's poor, if it's not very good, then you can apply these techniques, and your content isn't going to rank because it's just not good content. So do keep that in mind when writing. All right, let's go on to point number 4. The web address, or the URL, as we call it in the technical world, URL. Where you see the web address, you see it in the address bar of your browser, and you also, again, you see it in the search engine results. So it's that green line of text below the title of the page, you see the URL. Now, most of the time, the URL is produced from the title of the page. However, if you don't like what it says there, you can trim it, you can you can edit that area. So we can trim it down so it's perhaps a little bit shorter. But again, keep in mind having the keywords in the URL itself. And a lot of the time, again, if you've written a good title for the page, then the URL for the blog will have those keywords already in it. And then I just finished off with a few points there, the best way to format your URL if you do start editing it. Okay, let's move on to point number 5. Images. Okay, again, going back to what Ben said, I think it was something like 94% of users are more likely to read a blog post with an image in it, as opposed to not have an image. So it's finding an appropriate image, and so a lot of the time that's the hard thing to do. But again, Ben gave some great sources of where to get those images from. Now you've got your image. However, what you don't want to be doing is inserting a very large file size, as in the actual image itself is maybe 2 or 3 megabytes in size. And you want to optimize the size of the image that you're actually inserting into the blog. And you do that, there's free software online where you can upload your image and it will reduce the file size. But there's also things like Photoshop that you've probably heard about, and Photoshop Elements and other packages similar to that actually have a save for web option. And this crunches down the size of the image so that when you upload it into your website, it's a tiny file. So something like 100 kilobytes or less, which is far, far smaller than the large image that you might first be wanting to insert into the page. We want to keep the images small because it slows down the page speed, and that's a negative in the eyes of Google. So you want to keep that file size small. So you've got the image, you're saving it. Save the image as an appropriately named file name. So for example, if your blog was on divorcing couples, call it Divorce Couple in New York, say if you're based in New York, just give it an appropriate naming convention. So this is going to help the image rank in the Google image search results, which again is another plus. The other thing, you can add an image title and also something called the alt attribute within the blog software. Now the alt attribute gives you the image when the user is reading the image on the page. When you hover over the image, it produces that small piece of text that appears when you hover over the image. So again, it's good for usability when the user is actually on the page. So I think that's enough about images. Let's go on to point number 6. Internal and external linking. Now, this is a really good thing to do. This helps build the architecture of the website, the web page, the blog that you're creating. So internal links, again, let's say with divorce. If your blog post is, for example, on divorce, and throughout the divorce you might mention the word divorce and perhaps child custody, and you might have 2 areas of practice on your web page about these, about divorce and child custody. Well, don't be afraid to link through to those different pages within your website. It really helps the usability, it helps the site architecture. So for example, the users just read through your post and thought, they deal with divorce. You've made it easy for that user to be able to click through to the information that you say about divorce. And also linking out to an external website. So for example, Google really likes that you link out to authoritative websites. So if you just read something on the American Association of Justice, you read an article and that's what your blog post is about, then link out to that article. Don't be afraid to link out to sites such as lawyers.com or even your local Chamber of Commerce. You know, you might have had a mention in your local Chamber of Commerce. Link out to them. It's good for you in the guise of Google, but it's good for the site that you're linking to. Okay, let's move on to point number 7. The meta description. Now, the meta description also appears in the search engine results. It's that last piece that appears. So we've got the title that we talked about, we've got the URL, the web address, and then we've got that piece of text that appears in your blog in the search engine results. Now, basically, I tell my clients, this is your ad copy. You can control what is said here. This is your opportunity to try and make your users click through to your blog post. And if your piece of text contains keywords that the user has searched for, then they will appear bold. So, for example, in this case, I searched for the term Martindale. And we can see there that the word Martindale is appearing in bold. Now, this doesn't mean cram this area full of keywords because they'll stand out in the piece of text, because keywords aren't the ranking factor in the description meta tag, this piece of text. So don't waste it by putting in keywords. Use it as a selling tool to get your users to click through to your blog. Okay, now, I do have a point number 8. And only because this is not the best, this is not a best practice. Back in the day, you still might hear about it, and you might even see it in some of your WordPress packages. When you're writing your blog, you might see an area in there that say insert keywords here. Well, basically, that's a waste of area. It's not used anymore. Google doesn't consider it a ranking factor. So don't waste your time putting in 20, 30 keywords in there, because it's just completely ignored by the search engine. So, to summarize, so if you haven't got time for all those 7 points, the key ones I want you to keep in mind, consider the page titles, address the headline, and above all, just create awesome content. And don't spam. So that's all from me. I'm going to hand it back over to Ben, who's going to talk about the legal considerations when blogging.
Yes, thanks, Andy. And actually, I'm looking at the clock, and unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to have time to go into as much depth as I'd like to go into the legal considerations. So again, I'm very sorry, but we may have to skip this portion of the webinar. Now, everybody in attendance, you will receive some presentation notes after the webinar. And just quickly, I'll go over some of the main points I was going to make. Well, probably the biggest one is if you have a blog, probably by default, it's set up to handle comments. Because of the client-attorney privilege, you may not want people making comments, perhaps giving up some details of their potential case. So I would just remind everybody before you start blogging, look into the settings and make sure you can vet those comments before they're published. So again, in lieu of legal comments, we actually have some great questions to answer. Why don't we go into them?
Okay, thank you, Ben. This is Faith again. So as Ben mentioned, everyone will receive a copy of the presentation and the audio. So these legal consideration slides will be at the end of the slide, so you can just read through those as well. Just some points to keep in mind when you're blogging. So our webinar recap, blogging is an effective and inexpensive marketing tool. You want engaging topics and eye-catching titles. It's good for social media and guest blogging to get exposure, and you point out some critical elements of the SEO or titles, headlining content. So we have been taking questions, receiving questions, I should say, through the panel. If you have any now that you'd like to submit, I would invite you to do so. We will have a follow-up survey, which will appear immediately once the webinar is over. Honestly, it's going to take you less than a minute to fill out, and we would really appreciate some feedback on today's webinar. Also, as Ben mentioned earlier, we have another webinar scheduled for November 1st, Social Media to Brand and Grow Your Practice. And in the survey, if you select yes, I'd like to receive an invitation, we will invite you to that webinar as well. So you might want to just hold the date for that next webinar. So people are submitting questions. I'm going to take a look and read them off. Okay, I'm just taking a look at some that were submitted. Okay, so we have a good question. We could give this to Robert, I think. Does the length of the blog make an impact on Google search results?
Well, there are probably others on this panel as well who could answer that better. I can only tell you what I've been told, and that is you should shoot for about 600 to 700 words, because otherwise, at least one person who seems to know SEO said Google may be flimsy, but I'll defer to others on the panel.
Okay, so we'll get Andy to weigh in on that.
I'm going to jump in on this because there is no magic figure. However, we do give a recommendation to keep it above 500 and below 1500. I think the big thing is that when you're producing content, you're not waffling. It answers the question without being too much padding. So usually, you know, if you've written a blog and it's only 369 words, don't think, oh, I've got to make it 500 words to hit that magic figure. If the blog answers the question for the user and it's a high quality answer, you think I can't add any more to this, then that's fine. You know, you're not going to be penalized for just writing 300 whatever I said 49 words. So too long, it depends on what you want to talk about. So we just give a nice guide between 500 and 900. You know, write good content and don't waffle like I am right now. So.
And as also, you know, if you find that you're writing a lot of words, maybe over 1,500 words, a lot of blog platforms give you the option to what's called paginate your blog post. That means you can split it up into maybe 2 blog posts, and then when you get to the end of one, say advance to part 2.
Okay, so I have a question for Ben to answer. Can the panel describe or give examples of skimmable content criteria, such as section heading, topical opening sentences for each paragraph, etc.?
Well, I can start, and I'm a little biased, but I'll start with lawyers.com. There's a lot of articles. If you're just browsing that, that's a typical, that site is written in a style, it's like typical for writing for the web, and it's a great example if you're learning just how to change your writing so that it's easier to be skimmed. If you go to, let's say, lawyers.com, and there's like a part, like you find explore your issue. There are all these articles that are just written in very plain language, and almost all of them they have, again, like subheadings to make certain points. There will be a hierarchy of headings, so a title is like a big heading, big bold letters, some smaller subtitles, and then they break up a topic into certain steps. That's really what skimming is all about. So you want to go to the next question?
Okay. We have a question. Do you recommend having the blog on your firm website or on a separate URL with a link back to your firm website? And we'll go to Andy for that.
That's a really, really good question. We want to keep the blog on the site. We don't want to dilute. We don't want 2 websites. That's literally what we will be doing if we have this content of the blog on somewhere else. You've got 2 URLs, so you're taking the attention away from the user onto the blog, and then they'll have to click through to another website. Might cause confusion. So best practice, if you're blogging, have it on the same website. It builds strength and reputation for the main site overall as well. So yes, one site.
Okay, let me just throw that out to Tim and Robert. You have your blogs on your websites. Do you have it listed anywhere else?
Yeah, this is Tim. I have it just on my website. We do have a Facebook page, and you know we link it back and forth. But basically, the blogs are on the website.
I have it on the website. It's fed to Twitter, and I don't think it's being sent to Facebook anymore. And the video blogs that I've done for 2 years, those go on YouTube.
Okay,
channel.
perfect. That's great. Okay, another question come in, what is the downside of not allowing comments on your blog? And I know Ben touched on that under our legal considerations. Did you want to expand on that a little bit, Ben?
Sure, and I wouldn't say that there are downsides to allowing comments on your blog. It's a good idea to have comments on there if you want to really have a conversation with people. I think the issue is that, well, I know that everybody here listening abides by client-attorney privilege. Well, your potential audience may not know. So what I've seen on some attorneys' blogs, somebody will post something in regards to the post, but really share some details about their case. If they were to become your potential client, you wouldn't necessarily want all those details made public. So what I recommend is going into the setup of your blog. However you blog, there's going to be some kind of a settings panel where you can not turn comments off, but you can make comments only published when you approve them personally. And that way you can just make sure that nobody's violating that barrier when they make a comment.
Okay, great. Probably have time for one last question, and it's a great question, I think, for all of our attendees. And it is it better practice to have a separate blog for each attorney in a firm, or is having a firm blog with submissions from various attorneys, good practice? The question is, when you started talking about a blogger's voice, too many writers make the voice hard to determine. And we'll go to Andy for that.
I'm going to pass it over to our social media expert, because on an SEO side of things, it doesn't really matter as long as the user who's ever writing is producing good content. However,
yeah, if you are, let's say, a solo attorney, obviously you have just one blog for yourself. If you're part of a larger firm, it's true that having a blog is one way that you could potentially stand out from the rest of your firm. It's really more about the, let's say, the office politics. Starting a blog for yourself and not including other people. I did have one client who actually started a website to sort of market himself. He was part of a larger firm, and then I think the members of the firm asked him, why don't you promote yourself a little less and help promote the rest of us? That said, if you have people as part of your firm that are willing to contribute, I think having other voices doesn't have to dilute your blog. What it can do is add to it, because now you have that many more people promoting it. You have that many more people making posts and adding fresh content, increasing the frequency, and you can really develop it into something much bigger than you could with just one person.
Okay, and then just a final follow-up, we'll throw that out to Robert and Tim. Do other partners or members of your firm post blogs on your websites, or is it just you as individuals?
For me, I'm the only one in the firm doing it. It just becomes a little unwieldy to entice other people who may not be as disposed to writing to get them to do it. So I've picked up the mantle of that.
Okay, and Tim?
Yeah, I'm the same way. My business partner doesn't have the patience, and is a little more. He's more of a verbal type of person rather than writing. So yeah, so in this law firm, it just falls to me.
Okay, so I would say that's what's working for your firm, so that's what you should go with. All right, so we are definitely out of time here. I would like to thank everyone for attending our Martindale webinar on blogging, and just one final reminder that when we close the webinar, a very quick survey will pop up. Honestly, it will take less than a minute to complete, and we would truly appreciate your feedback if you could just quickly fill that out. And again, as a reminder, you will receive an email in another couple of days with the audio portion of the webinar as well as the slide presentation. So thank you all for attending, and we look forward to having you online for our next webinar. Have a great afternoon, everyone.